Hey everybody. Today I'm going to be reviewing Star Wars: The Force Awakens, directed by J.J. Abrams. J.J. is one of the few modern directors that is a household name and somebody that you can always count on to make a very entertaining blockbuster. I like to think of him as a franchise doctor because he's able to take franchises like Mission Impossible and Star Wars, ones that were considered maybe kind of lackluster, and he rejuvenated them with a lot of kind of energy and spark, while still maintaining that respect for the source material and maintaining that nostalgic feel. When I found out that Abrams was going to direct the Star Wars franchise, of course, I was very relieved because I had seen, like many people, I saw what he did with Star Trek. And as fun and exciting as the 2009 Star Trek film was, let's face it, it was not Star Trek, but it was Star Wars. JJ does not really do thought-provoking science fiction, which is what Star Trek is meant to be. He's more of the guy to do the serial matinee space westerns like Star Wars. So of course I knew that the franchise would be in good hands, and it was. The Force Awakens is pretty much everything that I thought it would be. It's a very solid movie. It's good. It's not great. It's not bad either. It's just good. And I know how this is gonna go. I know all the fans are going to be just like ejaculating all over it and probably calling it an instant classic, and you're probably thinking, well, you are the wrong person to review this movie because you're an artsy, fartsy hipster who's against pretty much any sort of conglomerate. And you're wrong. Believe it or not, when I was a child, I was just like any other crazy fan. I worshipped Star Wars. I was that cliche nerd that never got laid as a teenager because all I did was watch Star Wars dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I was that annoying person who, like, during the Mos Eisley Cantina scene would be pointing out all the different creatures and telling you their names and where they come from and their backstory, even though none of them had any speaking roles. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the Star Wars mythology. I'm gonna go ahead and just give a premise just because the film has been so heavily guarded. This is obviously the 7th installment of the Star Wars franchise, and it takes place roughly about 30 years after Return of the Jedi, when the Empire was taken down. But now you have different reincarnations of the Republic and the Empire. In the case of the Empire, it is the New Order. And then in terms of the Republic, it is now called the Resistance. And as far as the New Order, there is enough Hitler, Third Reich, World War II symbolism as I have ever seen in a Star Wars film, which is saying a lot. The New Order is led by Kylo Ren, who is a lot like Darth Vader Part 2, except he just has major anger management issues. Anyway, Luke Skywalker has disappeared, and General Leia Organa is trying to find him. The MacGuffin of the film, the very important map that contains Luke's whereabouts, is placed in a droid unit called the BB-8. Sound familiar? The very unlikely hero in the film is Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, and she lives on a desert planet of Jakku. Her call to adventure happens when she discovers the BB-8. Sound familiar? And I actually kind of like Rey. She's a very wide-eyed, naive young girl, and the writers are trying to rub it in our face that she is a strong, independent female character who does not need anyone to hold her hand, and that's literal. She actually has to say that in the film. And all I can say, I've said it a million times with all the female protagonists we've seen in these blockbusters, learn from Furiosa in Mad Max. Just let her be her. We don't need to draw attention to the fact that she is strong and independent and a woman. Rey meets Finn, who is an ex-stormtrooper who has a conscience and wants to be a good guy, basically. And they both represent the millennial generation in a way, the new generation of heroes that is being passed down the torch from the old generation, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker. Which can be pretty clever in a lot of ways. You know, when Han Solo comes on screen, they're like, wow, you're Han Solo, I've heard so many stories, so many legends, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that's the main idea of the plot, and I'm gonna tell you, as usual, what I liked first and then what I disliked. There is actually quite a bit to like here. I think that this film is definitely made by human hands, which is a nice change, and it's made by people who really, really love Star Wars and respect its legendary status, and they really want to honor the predecessors. It's not phoned in at all, and they really took the time to fill every single frame with a lot of detail and great imagery. It felt authentic, unlike the prequels, episodes 1, 2, and 3, which felt very soulless and like they were made by a bunch of robots and just blue screen everywhere. The Force Awakens has grit. The spaceships and the droids feel very clunky and rusty, like they've been worn down over years and they've been used a lot. There are a few shots, particularly on the planet Jakku, that were very reminiscent to me of like Lawrence of Arabia almost. I loved the images of Ridley where you had the ruins of the Star Destroyers in the sand in the background. That was gorgeous. And I have my issues with the plot, but there were things that I actually liked about it. And one of those things is that it had real focus. It had a clear idea of where it wanted to go from beginning to end, and it never once felt chaotic. It's very to the point, and it did throw a few curveballs that I don't think that a lot of the fans are going to see coming, which I thought was pretty ballsy, and I appreciated that. Each character in the main ensemble is very central to the plot, and each one of them is given at least a little bit of development and character personalities. And I think what saves them, what makes them work, is that they got really awesome actors to play the parts. They ham it up when they need to, they add charisma when they need to, and they also provide a little bit of depth when they need to as well. Daisy Ridley has that youth and that freshness that's very appealing. Her friend Finn is kind of awkward but good-hearted, and then you've got Poe Dameron played by Oscar Isaac, and I just love him. He's a Juilliard-trained actor, and I think that he's fantastic. He has a lot of charisma and a lot of potential to be almost like a second Han Solo. I mean, he is a pilot, a lot like Han Solo, and he does a lot of the woohoo and the, you know, let's blow this thing and go home kind of stuff. But my favorite character was actually Kylo Ren, who's played by Adam Driver from Girls. And I forgot about the character of Adam from Girls almost immediately. And a lot of that is because Adam Driver is a fantastic actor also from Juilliard. I felt the pathos and the internal struggle from him more than anybody else in the cast. And despite the fact that he is a villain, you feel the sympathy for him, the push and the pull between the good and the evil, which is something that at its core is probably the most powerful metaphor in the entire Star Wars canon. So on a basic level, I had fun with the movie and I found it entertaining. But, and I know this is where I'm gonna get killed, it has its problems. The main problem for me is the lack of originality in this movie, and I understand and respect what the makers of the film are trying to do. They are trying to pay homage to the originals by bringing back a lot of the same look and the nostalgia for the fans. They bring back so many of the old catchphrases and a lot of the look of it and old characters, and that's fine, but at a certain point it becomes heavy-handed and I found it distracting. And to me, the plot was almost beat for beat the same as A New Hope, and they didn't try to deviate from that or be original. It really did feel like almost like a medley of the original trilogy greatest hits. I was watching it, it was almost like JJ was going like, you see, that's the Millennium Falcon. Oh, look, Han just said I got a bad feeling about this, And I don't have a problem with nostalgia or, you know, having a few winks here and there at the audience as a throwback to the originals, but I wish that they were able to interweave it into the plot in a more subtle way and more clever ways. The planet Jakku looks exactly like Tatooine, but it's not. And Kylo Ren looks a lot like Darth Vader, and he has a lot of the same internal struggles as Darth Vader had, but he's not Darth Vader. There is a battle sequence at the end that is very reminiscent of the Battle of Yavin, but it's not. And the New Order base, the Starkiller base, looks pretty much exactly like a bigger version of the Death Star. So, I mean, I could go on and on about this. The problem was that the film tipped a little bit too far over into the recycled concepts category, rather than trying to at least do something slightly more original and have more creativity. And I know I'm probably going to get destroyed for what I'm about to say, but in defense of the prequels, yeah, I just went there. As flawed as they were, at least they tried to set themselves apart from the original trilogy by creating new worlds and a new look, new ways of telling the story. Now, did they fall flat on their face? Absolutely. Did they disappoint people around the world? Yes. And I don't think they're good movies. I actually think they're pretty mediocre films. But again, at least they tried to be different. At a certain point, I actually kind of have to appreciate at least an attempt at that. And I think with this film, on repeated viewings, I don't think you will find the same viscera that you feel on the first viewing, because the meat of the story is really lacking in the sense of you don't feel that same wonder and that same tension that you did in the original Star Wars films in this film, because we've seen it all before. There were things that I think that they could have explored more. They could have explored Finn's storyline a lot more. They kind of just brushed over that. They decided to go more for the nostalgia and all of that rather than really getting to go deeper with some of the concepts that they introduced here and there with the characters, because trust me, these are good characters and they can stand there on their own a little bit more. But despite my criticisms of the film, I actually did enjoy it, and I think that I'm going to recommend it because I think you will have a good time, and I know that the Star Wars fans are going to love it. Even people that aren't Star Wars fans can probably find something to enjoy in it, and as I said, it's a solid, well-made movie, and it really does just deliver on exactly what it said it would. And I will say I was certainly intrigued by the ending. The ending is fantastic. One of the best endings I think I've seen in any Star Wars film, and it really did set up future installments, which I actually am kind of excited for. And that is my review. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also like my Facebook page in the link below that. May the Force be with you.